All right. So I am sick, and I I don't know. YouTube still changed something, and um, you may not be getting this at all. It might be kind of shifty with the video. We're gonna see what happens. I'm gonna record this once though. If it doesn't work, then I'm sorry. Um, so Enneagram 5. Um, Something to note about, or I guess something to kind of keep in mind when we talk about Enneagram number 5 is um, I feel like there are some numbers that are similar to others in some ways. Um, but the Enneagram 5 is they're motivated by this desire to be competent in like everything. So they're called the investigator or the achiever sometimes, or not the achiever. It might be that. It might be the achiever, but they're um, they want to be an expert in every field. They're the kind of person that studies the encyclopedia for fun. Um, when you have a question, you can ask them, and they'll have an answer. They'll have an answer for anything that you have, and if they're not really sure, they will research it and become an expert in it. And give you an answer that is way above what you were looking for. So they're very analytical. They're very thought oriented. They are not about feelings at all. Uh, you know how nines are kind of asleep to their anger, particularly being in the anger triad. Um, fives, they want to be asleep to all their emotions. Uh, you know, I think about Ben Shapiro. I feel like he is a he's a 5. Uh, facts don't care about your feelings. That kind of concept, that kind of idea. Um, a 5 is somebody who like they investigate. They are very oriented on being competent, and they don't want to be seen as incompetent in any way. And so mastery of many things. Uh, One characteristic that's common among them is that they have their own sanctuary, and that sanctuary cannot be disturbed. It's very important that things are, it's private, and they, have this space. My brother is a 5, and his room is a private space, and nobody should go in there. Uh, if you do, it's only going to be because he welcomes you in. Um, so they have a sanctuary where they go and they study, and they study for fun. They like to learn new things just for fun. But there's, I guess, a few individuals that could be looked at as 5's in the scriptures. Uh, Whenever I've looked at um, different examples of 5's, um, oftentimes there's not very much said about them. There's not like a big person that pops out, a big Bible character that pops out. Sorry. But Thomas could be looked at as a 5. He wants to have the evidence. That's a big word for 5's. They're very evidence based, very oriented on you know factual things, and they don't want to uh, hold any contradictory views. They want their worldview to be very concise and very um, be able to not have any contradictory views. They want to have all the evidence. Um, Thomas, he has to have the evidence that Jesus is alive versus just the hearsay, just the not just the claims, but the evidence behind the claims. Um, and uh, so that makes fives kind of that's a good aspect of fives in some ways. In a world where um, you know, everything is just uploaded and, words come out before, there's any real thought to them. And it's very easy to just take people's words for it because you saw it on Facebook. Your friend shared it, and so oh well. But fives are individuals that are like, let's find out if that's really true. They they were fact checking before fact checking. uh, so, um, but a great example of um, of a five in the scriptures is Nicodemus, the Pharisee, who comes to Jesus by night in John chapter 3. Now, um, we don't know why he came at night. I think the assumption is that he was afraid because he was a Pharisee and he didn't want to be seen with Jesus. But if it's true that he's a five, then maybe uh, he went to Jesus at night because he wanted to have him to himself. He wanted to, not be bombarded by a bunch of people. Um, Another thing about fives is oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they're introverted. They're not super big on being a crowd and being in the center of attention. They want to be seen as competent, but they're not trying to like get the glory. They're not all about like um, you know pride is not their area in the sense that they want to be seen um, for um, seen as great and wonderful, like threes do sometimes. Um, but they just want to be seen as competent, and they want to feel confident, which is funny because they're not about feelings. They want to feel confident, though. Um, but anyway, Nicodemus, it seems like maybe, it's a possibility if he's a five that he came to Jesus at night because he wanted him to himself. He wanted to, ask the tough questions. And there's another aspect of fives that comes out in verse 2 of chapter 3. Um, this man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you have come from God as a teacher, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. And it's interesting because this is almost like a scientific method. There's a hypothesis. There's a analysis of things. So you have come uh, from God as a teacher. So you're a teacher, and you're speaking on behalf of God. For we know this. For we look at the evidence. No one can do these signs unless God is with him. So you know the understanding is, all right, so if this person is from God, they have to be able to do things that only a person who was of God could do. And because he does those things, he must be. So there's a hypothesis and analysis and conclusion. And fives like to live according to that scientific method. Sometimes they're very analytical. And so perhaps this is a way that kind of shows that he was a five. Um, but another reason why we might look at this too is because Jesus is trying to get him to feel something, it seems like. Um, and he speaks in metaphorical ways. Fives, they want to hear, they're blunt, they're straightforward, they want an answer. They're not poetic people. They're not into poetry and arts as much as they are into like thinking critically and things like that. And so Jesus turns to him and says, "Unless you are born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God." And Nicodemus, because he has that mind, says to him, "How can a man be born when he is old?" He takes it literally. He doesn't look at it metaphorically. He looks at it literally. He cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born, can he? And so from here, Jesus, he begins to teach him about the Spirit of God and being born again by water and Spirit. Um, and in verse 9, Nicodemus says, "How can these things be?" So he's still searching. He's still, he's not understanding Jesus, by this whole being born again, and Jesus looks, he says in verse 8, "The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from." You feel like you know the world and you want to be competent in everything, but you don't even understand the wind. You don't even understand how the weather works. Uh, so how can you understand the Spirit of God? And so that's kind of an issue with five sometimes. Since they're very evidence based. And I think that there's great evidences. There's Christian evidences, apologetics that help us with faith. Um, but when it comes down to it, we have to have faith in God. Those things can support that and justify our faith. Um, you know, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is the evidence. It's the evidence of things not seen. The fives would latch on to that idea. But they but they may have a difficult time uh, with the fact that they can't understand God the way that they would try to understand the rest of the world. Um, you know, we can't understand everything in the world, even. Um, we there are still so many scientific things that are to be discovered. Excuse me. Um, but we've got, um, but we've got to have faith. And so Jesus is trying to show him that there's something greater. Um, he talks about believing in him. He talks about um, the light and the darkness, practicing truth. Um, Whoever practices truth comes to the light. Um, and so um, Nicodemus is a great example of a five because they are, again, they're people that are very analytical, and they're always asking questions. Uh, they're a great person to have in Bible class, um, because they're going to ask you really good questions, and they'll follow up, and they want lessons to be meat filled. They want them to be scripture filled. Um, they're very excited when you give stats and statistics, and they want to know where you got them from. um, but anyway, that's kind of a little bit of an overview of five. Um, I didn't really talk about the health of fives. When they're not doing so well. Uh, it's when they feel incompetent. They are reclusive. Um, they isolate, and they do so in an unhealthy way. Um, when they are healthy, they are sociable, of course, and I feel like that's kind of um, consistent with some of the Enneagram. A lot of people generally kind of going overlapping a bunch of the numbers, and maybe all of them. Uh, Not all of them, but When we're unhealthy, sometimes we want to be reclusive. We want to close in and isolate. When we're more healthy, we're more liable to be interactive and social, and that's true with fives as well. Um, so anyway, I hope this was a great video. I'm not feeling my best, um, so I don't know how this is going to turn out. But anyway, um, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless.